This is a video that will demonstrate yet further incompetence. Well, it's not just incompetence, it's corruption from Formula One and the FIA, the governing body of the sport. Now, it's going to use the example of football and then we'll go on to football Formula One. Now, this article on the BBC Sport website says, did late flag offside law expose Anwaniyi, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry if I got it wrong, to serious injury. So what this article talks about is the notion that in football, the way that they apply the offside rule and the way that they flag for it now is there may be a player that's in an offside position, but the linesman no longer immediately flags. They wait till the passage of play has played through, and then if they determine that the offside player has interfered in play, they'll raise their flag and then look to disallow the goal on that basis. The reason that they do that is that they don't want to flag somebody offside that may not end up interfering in play, denying a goal that way. All right. What happened apparently was somebody was offside. They let the passage of play through. In doing so, this guy collided with the post, suffering serious injury. Okay, and they're saying that should they be changing this rule and the application of the flag? Why are they doing that? The reason they're doing that is that the sport of football has a duty of care to all that play football. Okay, they have a duty of care to make the rules and apply the rules in such a manner to protect the people participating in the sport. So if there's a potential risk, if you are exposing those players to unnecessary harm, you have a duty of care to take the right measures, to make the changes, to remove that harmful, the potential of that harm. Okay, so this is what the FIA and these committees will be meeting to discuss. Do we need to make changes to this because it's our duty to do so to try and protect the players from sustaining injury from these kind of scenarios? Now, what will happen on this situation? My firm belief is that there will be no changes, and the reason being, the type of injury that this guy sustained could have easily have taken place in under normal playing conditions where no foul play was committed. Okay, a collision with a goalpost can happen when nobody's at fault. It's just a hazard of the game which it's difficult to protect against, and that is just part of the dynamics of the sport. Another scenario being on this particular instance, I've not even watched it, but in this particular instance where the linesman kept his flag down, passage of play concluded, he might have then put his flag up and said, actually, it was a situation where this guy did interfere in play, and therefore we need to flag it for offside. Let's say it's exactly the same situation. That particular guy that was in the offside position didn't interfere in play, and the same kind of event unfolded and this player collided with the post, suffering the injury, but actually it turned out nobody was offside. You can't say, oh, we should have put the flag up, shouldn't have put the flag up, that would have prevented that. It doesn't work like that. Okay, there is a problem in as much that last-ditch tackles that are made can cause injury, and when you can see it's a glaring situation where a player is offside and they're going through on goal, you know that they're offside, and then the defender in desperation runs back and takes them out. Well, yeah, that's a problem. We do see that. You think to yourself when you watch that situation, well, you should have stopped the play and then there wouldn't have been that. But again, in that situation, the defender should not be doing that. That's a foul that the defender is performing. They shouldn't be tackling like that anyway, regardless of when the flag is shown or not, and whether that flag should have been shown earlier or not. The defender should not be doing that. So there's already a measure in place saying that should not be taking place anyway. So this is why I feel that they will not look to change the implementation of that flagging rule when the linesman puts their flag up due to the duty of care issue. Okay, I doubt that they will. They might do it on other grounds, but the duty of care to the players, it's not really affected because this same kind of scenario can take place. The existing rules are that you don't foul players, and there's a consequence for that. And players can be fouled, or players can collide with posts under other circumstances. So when the time in which you throw the flag should be irrelevant to whether players get fouled or players collide with a post. Okay. Anyway, with all that being said, we now go to Formula One. Formula One has a duty of care to its drivers. Motorsport, the FIA, the governing body, has a duty of care to all drivers within motorsport, and that is that the rules of motorsport are such that it's conducted in a manner where the safety of those competitors is considered. One of those considerations is what elements of motor racing could be dangerous and how do we manage those risks? How do we make it as safe as possible? Now we get the strap-on fanboy that likes to see the crashes. That's one of the reasons they watch the sport. Okay, but the pureness of the sport is actually seeing cars race, not crash each other out. All right. If you want to see cars crash each other out, watch stock car racing. That's allowed in that. Bit of contact's allowed in that. But most forms of motorsport, contact is an infringement. Okay, you shouldn't be connecting with the other cars. You should be leaving each other room on the track and not making contact with them. And ultimately, when you get to close quarter racing, it becomes dangerous. Two vehicles moving at high speed in close proximity, if they collide, there is a potential for harm being done. So, you need to have rules of engagement. You need to have systems in place, parameters by which cars have got to conduct themselves in these situations. So overtaking, there needs to be a set of rules that all competitors are aware of and are held to for such circumstances. Now they do exist. They exist in the FIA International Sporting Code, and they are all relate to leaving track room for your opponent under certain circumstances, and where that is under certain circumstances, when you must leave track room, and essentially when you must yield. What has been introduced by media, okay, by Sky Sports F1, is the notion of the overtaking guidelines. Now, those guidelines that they tell us about, the new for this season, new for that season, new for this season, the new guidelines are this: the race to the apex. It's all a lie, okay, because it doesn't comply with the actual core rules from the FIA that are in the International Sporting Code. And what they do, they tell the public that it's all about who won the race to the apex of a corner. Well, the definition of an apex, it's not a fixed point of a corner. The apex of a corner depends on the line you take around the corner, so that's not valid. It's not a definitive point, and it's in no way a valid ruling, because when you go round a corner, if two cars are trying to race each other to what would be the midpoint, the point where you unwind your steering, so you enter into the steering into the corner, and when you're coming out the corner, you're straightening, and that steering will back out. Okay, and at that point in time, as you are cornering, they're saying that's where you determine whether or not you have to leave your opponent track room, or whether you're entitled to use all of the track or not. Well, that's that's too late to determine that, because if all you care about is travelling as fast as you can to get to that point of the on a track before the guy that you're racing to that point, having won that race, if you're travelling then too fast to remain on track and make that corner, well, you're not in control of your car. And in that snapshot, which is a split second, you've got to determine, which you may not be able to do. It might take a freeze frame, it might take a still image to determine, oh, actually, who is allowed at that point there. When you're travelling around a corner at, 60 miles an hour, you've got to take a still shot, which you're then going to analyse and go, well, which car's ahead, which one has got to leave the other car room, and which car has got to back out. Have they got to leave him room, or is he entitled to use all of the track, leaving the other car nowhere to go? It's too late. But if you're going too fast and your only trajectory is that you are going over to the far edge of the track, there is no way of you taking a line that affords space on your outside, because you're going that fast you can't take any other line. But the car that's trying to overtake you is ahead of you at the apex, but you're out of control. You can't leave them the room that now they are entitled to. Where's the other car going to go? Well, you're in a situation where it might be off the track. What if there is no space off the track? What if we're at one of the tracks where there's barriers around the outside? Because you see, the rules are, those regulations in the FIA International Sporting Code, they apply for every circuit. Every track around the world, it's the same set of rules that apply. That's what rules need to be. They need to be universally compatible to the entire competition and every venue that competition is contested at. So, if the application of that rule produces an outcome whereby, oh, who won the race to the apex? Oh, it's got to be this guy is entitled to room on exit, but the guy on the inside, he went there so fast in trying to win the race to the apex, he's now not going to be able to make it around that corner without going to the far edge of the track, meaning there is no space now for the guy on the outside. So where's he going? And he's going that fast that he can't go on any other line. He can't put the brakes on and make an emergency stop. Where's he going to go? Oh, crash. It's nothing to do with the race to the apex. It's bullshit. It's lies. Lies to excite the kiddies, to convince the world that Max Verstappen rules, that Max Verstappen is the expert of, are the valid overtaking rules. And what they are, they're dangerous. Okay, they're dangerous. They are exposing drivers to the potential for harm. They're exposing drivers in the sport of Formula One to the potential of harm, injury, and death by drivers driving in that manner, potentially resulting in harm. And it's their responsibility to ensure that drivers compete and contest in a manner that adheres to rules that make the sport as safe as it can be. It's a sport that has got inherent dangers with it. We have to accept that driving cars at 200 miles an hour plus against each other, there is risk of collision, there is risk of danger. But it is the responsibility of the governing body of that sport to minimise those risks. And you can minimise the risk with overtaking with proper procedures for doing that. You can do it. And they've existed for years. And that the way that they existed, and they still exist this way, because again, if you look at the actual regulations in the FIA International Sporting Code, this holds true. And that is, when you're attempting to make an overtake, you have to, at the braking zone, it doesn't define this, but this is the way it needs to be done, at the braking zone for a corner, The assessment of your car relative to the car that's either you're seeking to challenge or is challenging you is where you assess who is entitled to what room around the corner. At the braking zone for each and every corner around the track is where you make the assessment, because it is at that braking zone that you then select the braking force for the speed that you need to take for the line that you need to take around that corner. That's the way it is. It has to be at the braking zone. Otherwise, it's too late. Otherwise, you're carrying so much extra speed that it will cause understeer, 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 and you will not be able to remain on track, leaving any space on your outside if the other car is entitled to that space, because you have not braked in time and you're not in enough control of your car to abide by the rules. And that is affording the other car track room if it is eligible for track room. It's far too late by the apex of the corner. It's a bullshit presentation presented by Sky Sports. The media should have a duty of care, because the media educates the population about what is acceptable and what isn't within that sport. Anybody that then participates in motor racing will have a belief from what they've been educated by the media of the sport about what is acceptable and what isn't. So anybody that wants to take part in motor racing and has watched Formula One will think that that is the parameters for being able to make a legal overtake in motorsport. And it's not. And despite the local rules, when you engage in motorsport, you will have a safety briefing. The mentality of people is often as such that they listen to it, they might ignore it, because they think they already know. I already know this. I watch Formula One. I know what's acceptable and what's not in Formula One, because Martin Brundle has told me the rules. Martin Brundle's the expert. He's told me it's the race to the apex. I'm just come to this karting track to do some recreational karting. We're having a 40-lap race. The guy that hit us here, what does he know? He's giving us a safety briefing telling us we're not allowed to run each other off the track, because that constitutes an infringement that would get flagged for. But no, I know about motor racing. It's all about winning the race to the apex, and if I beat him to the apex, then it doesn't matter. And what if then somebody dies due to an incident like that? Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? Is it the karting track, who's given the safety briefing to people who've then been conditioned to believe that they were acting appropriately in this sport? Who's conditioned them to believe that that is appropriate, that that's okay? Oh, that would be the mind conditioning media, lying to produce the fake Max Verstappen fluffing narrative. That would be a responsibility of the governing body of the sport to ensure that the sport that they oversee is carried out in the right manner, with the correct safety measures that they are responsible for, and that people then see that taking place and learn from that, so that anybody else that participates in any other form of motorsport has already developed that understanding from seeing the pinnacle be carried out in a certain manner. Take rugby, for example. People like seeing rugby, they like seeing the hard hitting challenges, of guys, you know, you know, unlike the real hard men of Formula One, the posh boys, the where daddy's a billionaire, most of them, and they get to race around the track. The real men racing around the track. Rugby lads, they're what 16 stone guys taking each other out, right? People like seeing that kind of combat on the field. What has rugby done? Oh, that's exciting. That excites people. yeah, let's just do that. No, what rugby's done is identified that there's certain ways of tackling that can expose players to risk of injury. There's certain ways of tackling which can expose the players to risk of spinal injury or concussion, and therefore they've adopted their tackling rules to outlaw certain ways of doing it. Scrummaging, 8 guys against 8 guys, but can result in spinal injuries. They've adopted their methods of doing that, haven't they? Football, heading the ball. We've got now um, kind of research into whether excessive heading of the ball has resulted in long-term brain injuries and the susceptibility to um, early onset brain deterioration conditions. So, what are they doing? They're looking to change something. Their responsibility to try and protect the people that engage in that sport, limiting the number of uh, heading that takes place, especially for the younger players. This is what they do. They identify that there's a problem, they identify the potential risks, the potential harm that can be carried out, and then they take the necessary measures to minimize that risk. That's what each and every sport does. If it detects that there is the scope for an enhanced risk due to doing certain moves within that sport, they outlaw it for everyone's protection. Formula One has overridden those rules that are there for protection, and it is now fluffing the show, exciting the kiddies, validating Max Verstappen's filthy technique to present Max as being the expert of the rules and being the best you've ever seen. Well, the FIA, you have a duty of care. Sky Sports F1, you have a moral duty of care. No, we know you don't have any morals, okay, but you do have a moral duty of care. There might be some lawyers willing to argue you also have that same level of duty of care, okay. I'm not going to state whether or not that would be deemed to be the case or not, but Sky Sports, you do have a moral obligation to educate the viewers of the sport in a manner that doesn't condition them to believe that something that is wrong and is a danger is acceptable. And that's what you do. That's how filthy you are. You're willing to get people to believe that that's okay. And if they replicated it, they might cause harm to either themselves or somebody else. But because they listen to you, Sky, they think that's okay. They think that that's okay because they've heard it from you. So, on that grounds, I think it's highly likely that a judge would take into consideration what it is that you've informed the people of and why it would be that then the people thought that that might be okay. Oh, because the experts, those at the pinnacle of the sport, said it was okay. So why wouldn't I think it was okay? It was only the guy that was down at the track, some guy that's he only seems to work there at the weekends. He was just telling me I wasn't allowed to do it, but what does he know? Who is the person that really is behind causing the harm? Sky Sports F1, the mind conditioning machine. The FIA, fraudulent organisation, not fit for purpose, not fit to be the governing body of well, they're not fit for anything. They're just corrupt and definitely not fit to be the governing body of any form of sport. So, hopefully this has been of some use to some people. Hopefully you've learnt something. And ultimately, there's information now that has been produced, which is out there, and and I hope this doesn't happen, but should any driver suffer injury, or worse, death, as a result of performing or being involved in a on-track manoeuvre, an overtaking manoeuvre, cornering manoeuvre, whereby one of the drivers has gone in there trying to win the race to the apex, and it's only at that point there where it's determined whether they need to leave room for the other car, or it was valid that they could just run the other car out of room, and that resulted in injury or death. Well, that's then scope for the injured party to sue the shit out of the governing body. So, the information's there. It's been stated that who is the problem, who that responsibility lies with, and that's the FIA. That is the FIA. It's a known dynamic. It's been stated. So you carry on doing what you do, FIA. You carry on saying what you say, Sky Sports F1. You can't get out of the fact that you're doing something wrong. You're not fulfilling your duty of care. You've got no defence for that. Got no defence. So there'll be certain people within those organisations, certainly the FIA, that have the responsibility. And should they be demonstrated to have failed in that responsibility, they can be imprisoned for that. That is one of the potential consequences that can be applied. Especially if it's loss of life. That's negligence. That's professional negligence that's resulted in loss of life. So, there you go, FIA. Over to you. Thank you all for your time.